You're listening to the Life Purpose Advisor Podcast, Episode 2.
When you ask me about a life purpose, you know me as a winemaker. You know me as somebody who said, you know what? I've had enough of this corporate world. I've had enough of all these pressures. And you know what? I'm just going to follow a passion, follow a bliss, and hope for the best and see if that works out.
You're listening to the Life Purpose Advisor Podcast.
Life purpose, spirituality, higher calling, personal growth, meaningful life.
We ask the deep questions about living a balanced life of meaning, purpose, and joy.
Passion, know thyself, be mindful, spiritual practice, aha moments, life lessons, balance.
It is time to welcome your host, Angie Swartz.
I am selfishly very excited to welcome my guest to the show today because I love the wine that he makes. My friend Todd Clift is the winemaker at Moonstone Cellars in Cambria, California, which is in the beautiful, very luscious central coast of California. His wonderful wines have won 400 awards and counting, and I know he's got some new wines that I don't even know about. Todd and I met years ago when I stumbled upon his quaint little, very successful, nicely hidden winery at the time in Cambria, and I look forward to putting him on the hot spot about his purpose. Welcome to the show, Todd. It's my pleasure to have you.
It's so great to be here, Angie, and you are too kind. You are welcome to come up and taste the new wines anytime.
Well, I love to get up that direction. I think the last time I was there, maybe February, I stumbled by and you were already closed for the day, and I was very sad about that. But I know I can always get your wine any time. And for those folks that are listening, if they wanted to get a great bottle of your wine, how would they do that?
Well, you can always go to moonstonecellars.com and go into our website there, or you can call. Our phone number is 805-927-WINO.
Wino. Say it again.
805-927-WINO, 9466.
What a great number. And I'll try to talk Todd into giving us a little discount at the end of the show. I bet I can get it out of him. Sure. So what's going on in the wine world? I love the Viognier, but what's going on up there? Oh,
great question. We had a super crazy harvest this year. I've never seen anything like it. My mentor always told me to expect the unexpected, and sure enough, the unexpected happened again. All of our grapes, I make everything from a very light Sauvignon Blanc to a very heavy Cabernet Sauvignon, and it usually takes about 2 to 3 months for all those grapes to come in. This year, all 14 of the varietals that we make came in within 2.5 weeks. So we were working our tails off this harvest. And I think it has everything to do with the heat and the drought. That's what kind of drove the conditions of this year's harvest. But that's all done. Sometimes I have to punch down grapes during the middle of Thanksgiving. Now I can eat my turkey and enjoy my family and not have to worry about getting out to the winery and taking care of those fermenting bins. So I'm pretty happy about this year.
Oh, right. Right, a delightful surprise. Turn in the road that gave you some gifts, it sounds like.
Indeed.
So I love on your website, I love talking to you. We could talk for hours, and I want to ask you some deep questions about your purpose. But before we get into that, tell me about Dog of the Day.
We are a dog-friendly winery and tasting room. So with that, we have a little sign posted out front. If your dog is friendly, we're dog-friendly. So with that, if you bring your dog in, we will take a picture of your dog posed in front of a barrel or some sort of wine setting. And, of course, your dog will get lots of treats and water. We have dog water, which is in a wine bottle, and we will pour that for your dog so he or she can taste in the company with you and all the rest of the revelers in our tasting room.
So Moonstone Cellars is really a dog watering spot that might serve some wine to the dog owners. If they're nice.
Yeah, exactly. The dogs know us well and know to bring their masters to our tasting room because, there's something for them to do, too.
Now, that is a wicked good strategy, my friend. Marketing to the dogs. The reason that I like Todd so much when we first met by chance is he told me his story about being an ex-corporate guy who wanted to follow his passions and do something different. And I'm still in love with your story, and I love following what you're doing and see you taking trips and taking time off and really taking care of your life, living what it seems like from this perspective, a life of joy. I'm interested to know, do you think you have a life purpose, and what is it?
Great question. Wow. I've had to think about that a little bit. So certainly going from the corporate world to making wine was a decision that I knew was going to be, financially bone crushing for a while, but I knew that I had to do it because that was what was inside of me. And I knew that I was going to have to take quite a few steps backwards to really get myself where I would be, in balance with myself and right with the world. And so with that, it was one of the best decisions I ever made, and it spawned off all kinds of other wonderful things in my life, such as my wife and everything else, who I would have never met had I not made all these decisions. So when you ask me about a life purpose, you know me as a winemaker, you know me as somebody who said, you know what, I've had enough of this corporate world, I've had enough of all these pressures, and you know what, I'm just going to follow a passion, follow a bliss, and hope for the best and see if that works out. But I started to think about it, and I think my purpose in life or my life purpose is to be a teacher.
A teacher of making wine? A teacher of what?
Well, I started to think about it, and I like taking on these crazy challenges. Like, what did I know about making wine? I didn't know anything. I was making some bottles at home that were horrible. But I said, you know what? I'm going to apprentice for 5 years under a master, and I'm going to take on this challenge. Now, my favorite thing to do now is to teach people about wine. So if you come to the tasting room, you're going to find me behind the bar. And I love the questions that people ask, like, how do you make it, or how do you drink it, or how do you properly taste it? That's when I hit my stride and say, let me share with you what I know about this. And I found that a lot of the challenges I've taken on in life that I try to master or, found enjoyable, I like to share that. I like to, with people who are interested in that particular hobby or vocation, I like to share that. I think I've decided that that's really where the joy comes from, is teaching what I know.
That's nice. Now, what were you doing before when you were working in your corporate job? I
was working for a real big computer company. It was Sun Microsystems. It's now Oracle. Just a few weeks after I decided that was enough. Yeah, I was in the floor 25 of Tower 2 of the World Trade Center. And after that happened, and just having been in the corporate world for so long, you just have to ask yourself, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I was making a crazy amount of money, but I was never home. I was always on the road. I was in the air, actually, flying all over the place. And whatever you did was never good enough. I mean, you could be a hero for a week if you closed a big deal for a corporation like that. The stock price would move, and you were like, Mr. Big Shot. But then it was do it again, and the pressure was back on. It was a very, what I would call a man-made, contrived pressure, where I find myself in winemaking. When the grapes come in, that's like a natural pressure. It's like, hey, Mother Nature has offered up this bounty. Do you want to take advantage of it or not? And you need to jump in and make it happen. It's not somebody saying, we have a quarterly stockholders report coming out soon. What are your numbers? What's your forecast?
Right.
I've gotten myself a little bit more grounded now to what I feel is like real in the world.
Going back to, what a gift to be there. Many people, I think, are wishing for that and can't see the path to get there. And what you just mentioned, I think sometimes it takes a big event in our life. Hopefully most people are not in something like the World Trade Center, but we all have things that come in our life that are messages to direct us in a different direction. And if we're listening, it can be a joyful thing.
I would agree with that. It wasn't just the World Trade Center. I think there was a divorce going on at the time as well. So, yeah, there was a lot going on, and that was a really good time to sit back and kind of reevaluate what is important in life.
I'm really interested in those things that happen, because most people that I've spoken with over the years that are following their purpose, they've been through some big tragedy in their life. And you're not the first person to mention a divorce. So would you consider both of those things a little hints to you to go somewhere else?
Yeah, and I wouldn't classify, not that you said this, but I wouldn't classify a divorce a tragedy for me. But it was one of those kind of realizations where at first, and I think this happens maybe more with guys, as a failure. I looked at it like, wow, how did I fail in this marriage? I committed to this for my life, and now it's not working. And it really causes you to take pause. And so with that, do all the analysis of why we're in this situation. And then you take that going forward and say, all right, now I know about that. How do I want to take what I know now, maximize my life, and maybe not recreate the situation?
I don't know if that's just for men. That's exactly how I felt in getting divorced also. It was very much about failure with other aspects, but I wouldn't recommend that to anyone. Would you?
No. It's not a great path, and it's always something worth working on, marriage, that is. But if it's one of those things which is just going to cause pain for both parties, I'm all in favor of saying, all right, let's find a amicable way out of this to where we can both get back on track to a joyful life. So
going back to your purpose, because we don't want to talk about divorce for the rest of our time, or I don't. So you mentioned that you're a teacher. I don't think I've ever heard you say that before, but you're now a podcaster. And is that part of your teaching purpose?
Great question. I didn't think about it that way, but I guess you're right. It is. I have a weekly podcast, which it started out daily, if you can believe it. There's about, 60 episodes, which I did every single day, called Wine Word of the Day. And I guess that's exactly what it was. I wanted to pick a wine term, some sort of cryptic wine term out of the air, and explain to my customers what that meant, hopefully in a funny, engaging kind of a way. That was the whole idea behind that. And then I realized, wow, what a burden did I just create for myself, a daily podcast. And so now it's evolved to where I have a guest host, which is one of my great employees she's our club manager who manages, 1,000 of our best customers and whatnot. She's hilarious. She was a stand-up comedian on the road for 20 years, and she did a lot of radio in Texas. So she has this thick Texas drawl, and she's hilarious on our shows. So her and I, we go through the Wine Word of the Day. We still do that. It should be called Wine Word of the Week now because we're a weekly show on Fridays. And again, we pick some word out of the air and we tie it to some sort of shaggy, we start with some event that happened on that day. And then through some sort of shaggy dog tale, we get it to a educational wine term. So, right, I'm back to teaching there. It's an outlet for me to kind of share what I know and hopefully enrich other people's lives who find wine to be a passion for them. And it's just a way for me to stay connected to people who can only get up to Cambria, once a year. Mm-hmm. It's a relationship builder and just kind of a fun, little teaching moment.
So you can listen to Todd's podcast on iTunes or at moonstonecellars.com if you're interested in learning about the Wine Word of the Day, which is actually Wine Word of the Week. Mm. And you can also see the Dog of the Day out there. There seems to be a lot of the days going on.
We're a daily operation. We're open every day. So
Word of the Day, Dog of the Day, Drink of the Day.
And we have a radio station that plays 24/7. So
wow.
Yeah. And that has lots of silly commercials on it and lots of great music that you would expect to hear in a tasting room. So you can take a bottle of wine or whatever your favorite beverage is and you can just hang out on your deck or your porch or whatever and stream our radio station over the internet. And you can hear me giving little wine tips and just some very fun, relaxing, melodic music.
Wow, that sounds great. I didn't know you had that. How do we find it?
You can go to moonstonecellars.com/radio, or you can go to Live 365. So it's LIVE 365.com. Just type in Moonstone Radio or whatever, and you'll pick it up. And so it's pretty fun. There's a lot of silly, commercials done by a voiceover guy who used to be the voiceover guy for the trailers for Universal Studios. So he is a pro. He makes us sound really good.
I can't wait to hear it. What a nice gift. I can't wait to go out and listen to that. I was thinking earlier today, it's been a long time since I actually bought a CD or an album on iTunes and just listened to the whole thing over and over until I really knew all the music because life has really changed with music these days. To think that there's a go-to wine music channel that you can just click on when you need it. Wow, that sounds terrific.
Absolutely. It's fun. Again, it's a way to stay connected. And, again, there's lots of little wine tips in there, too. So there's the educator coming out of me again.
Right. I can't wait to hear it. Going back to your purpose for a minute, do you think that you had glimpses of your purpose all your life, like that you wanted to do something like this, or did it hit you all of a sudden? How did it come up?
I think it's kind of like a backlash from, it's hard to say, but I can remember one particular job that I had that I really, really loved. It was an internet company, and we were selling internet services, and it's a now defunct company, or it was scooped up by somebody else. But I was promoted to internet engineer, which meant it was my job, or sales engineer, to train all the salespeople how to sell the products. And I said, the best way to do this is to understand the products, because who out there likes a salesperson who's trying to sell you something who doesn't know how it works? I mean, would you buy a car from a guy who doesn't drive a car? It's just, So I had a whiteboard in my office, and I found that I was like in my zone when I was showing these good folks what our products were, what they did, and how it could help them. And I didn't realize it at the time. I must have been, 35 or something at the time. As things go in fast-paced internet, corporate world back in, the dot-com days, I ended up taking a job, a much higher-paying job at another company that made me very specialized in something that I had to do. But it was not teaching anymore. It was not sharing what I knew. It was doing what I had to do. All of a sudden, I just started feeling empty inside, and I didn't know why, because I was making twice as much money, and I should have been on top of the world, because who wouldn't want that? And I think it took me leaving that job and going on a extended, hiatus from work, did a little travel. While out traveling, I thought to myself, that's why I did not like that job, because I was put in a situation where I had to just go and make deals happen without really kind of sharing and feel like I was giving. I felt like I was put in a position to take. I had to go out there and get the money, and it was kind of empty, even though I was paid a lot of money to do it.
I bet there's listeners out there that can really relate to that. So you mentioned travel. Travel is big for you, right?
Absolutely. I think that's one of those things where the more you see, the more you understand, the more cultures you can get exposed to, the more you can get a better grasp or feel on the world and how there's much more out there than what you think is important or what your culture or your country think is important. So a couple things I did after leaving that big corporate job and having the divorce happen there, it's like, hey, I can do anything I want. I've got some money in the bank. So I bought a motorcycle, and I took about 3-4 months off, and I drove coast to coast twice, and I tried to visit as many national parks as I could. And after I was done with that, I hopped aboard a friend's 40-foot sailboat, and he and I took about 8 months to go from Baja California all the way down to the Galapagos. And that was kind of a life-changing experience for me, because I found myself in these extremely poor, what we would consider just a bombed-out ghetto to, typical American neighborhood. And I should say North American neighborhood, because you get schooled on that real fast when you go through Central America and South America. We're going through these little villages in every place from Mexico to El Salvador and Costa Rica and you name it. Here you look at this shack, this like rubble of a home, and there's laughter and there's joy and there's great smells from the kitchen coming out of there, and the kids are having fun and playing. And you think about that for a minute and go, wow, these people are actually truly happy. And yet any of us can drive through some of the most luxurious neighborhoods in North America, and there's probably some unhappy people, some stressed out, unhappy people inside of those mansions with, manicured lawns out front. So it really helped me put things in perspective, and that's what told me is like, you know what, you're on the right path. Just do what you want to do. Life is too short. Enjoy what you have and enjoy the people around you and enjoy your family. That's what's really happiness.
Right. Very nice. I think some of our compass got a little off somehow here in the U.S., but it seems like we're headed back in the other direction.
I think so. I think the generation coming up behind us here is attuned to some of the unhappiness that maybe their folks have gone through by, pursuing the almighty dollar. And they seem to be a little bit more socially and environmentally aware, and it's good to see.
It'll be interesting to see what they bring.
Absolutely.
What they bring to life, for sure. Can I ask you about your spiritual beliefs?
Sure. I'm an open book. I was brought up by an atheist and an apathist. I believe that people are kind of a product of their upbringing. I mean, if you're born in a Buddhist country or a Hindu country, it's probably what you're going to be. Having said that, then I went off to college to a very strict fundamentalist Christian college. So I got some great exposure to that. I had at least a couple classes where, you got tested on every word of the Bible. But at that campus, in order to avoid my friends so I could get some proper study in, I would hide out in the library in the Eastern religion section where there was all the Hindu and Buddhist books. And just to break up my own accounting studies or whatever it was I was doing, I would pull a book off the shelf. And I would read that and go, this is making a lot of sense to me. There's something about this that resonates. And I think it's the selflessness. Instead of a deity, instead of judgment, instead of serious rules and dogma, it was more about, hey, how do you take yourself out of the picture, put yourself into the fabric of humanity and the environment and be in that moment and don't worry about what happens next. That's all going to take care of itself if you're just relaxed and chill about it. And so I started, reading more and more books on meditation and Buddhism. I got to say, I never necessarily took to it, but it probably was the one thing that made the most sense to me. So given that, not really a spiritual guy, I'm a serious golden rule guy. I really love fellow man. I challenge you to find an enemy of mine. I'm sure there's some people that don't like me for one reason or another, but I have a hard time saying a bad word about anybody or about anything. And I love my fellow man, and I love the planet that we live on. And I think there's just some laws of nature that just should be in place. And that's take care of each other and take care of the planet that we're on, and should all be good. But other than that, I'm not holding myself to any afterlife or anything like that.
Very much in the present. I like that picture of you in the library, digging a little debits and credits and then pulling off, the I Ching off of the bookshelf, or the Bhagavad Gita or something like that.
The Upanishads.
Ah.
It was down there. It was in deep. I'm like, what am I reading here? This is kind of cool.
Well, I really believe that everything that happens in our life has meaning. So I'm sure the Upanishads were there to influence you in your beliefs, that how you practice your daily life. So, but that's very, very funny. The only thing that was missing, I bet, was a glass of wine. You weren't there yet.
That was a dry campus, Angie. Dry campus.
Can't do that in the library. And who goes to school on a dry campus? My goodness.
Oh, I know. I think that's what, there's some of those things in your life that get repressed and that you need to act out. So that was probably one of them. You wouldn't let me drink wine at my school, so I'm going to go ahead and make wine for a living. Take that. Try to explain that to the alumni committee.
I think it's true. I went to a party school, Ohio University undergrad, and drinking is not a huge part of my life. So there you go.
Yeah.
It works, as you said.
We're all rebels at heart.
Going back to a little more tactical question, so when you were going through this change, leaving your corporate job, were there any tools that you used, personality assessments or books that you read that kind of helped you go in the right direction, or was it all experiential?
Wow. Man, I got wild. No, I didn't think about this. I got wildly into poetry and even wrote poetry. I mean, I think that was the way to kind of express what I was going through. The cool thing about poetry is what you're trying to do there is capture a moment and do it in as few words as possible. And it doesn't have to rhyme. So I took a lot of license with that. I think I freaked out a few of my friends because, for the most part, I'm sort of a guy's guy. I love motorcycles and sailboats and wine and, and all of a sudden Todd's emailing me poetry. It's what's going on here? Definitely I was going through a transition. I was the managing editor of my school newspaper. I like words. And so I think that was how I had to kind of express myself. I remember reading a lot of Billy Collins and who's kind of a pop poet. I mean, he's kind of fun. But I read a lot of dark stuff too. And I think it was helpful because I let somebody like Charles Bukowski, that guy stayed at rock bottom for a long time and wrote about it pretty eloquently. And I thought to myself, okay, at least my situation is not as bad as this guy. So I think I use, some of the readings as a reference point as opposed to, it'd be very easy for somebody like me who is in the alcohol business to wildly abuse that and just say, oh, my life's a mess. I'm just going to, take to the bottle. So I read about a guy who took to the bottle instead, and that helped me realize, yeah, that's not the answer.
That's so not your personality either. Doesn't seem like your thing to do.
Yeah, it's hard to take on new challenges when you're constantly at the bottom of a bottle.
Right.
It's hard to be productive.
So.
It's all about appreciating what it is as opposed to, having it take you over. But there was one other personality assessment that just happened to occur at that time because I was trying to think about what I was going to do next career-wise. The wine thing didn't come up until after I was out floating around on a boat forever going, what should I do next? So I took a Myers-Briggs personality test, and that came back that I had like equal parts of left and right hemispheres in my brain, that the creative and the technical just were like absolutely balanced. That was an eye-opener for me. I guess I should have known that because I like a lot of technical things. I mean, wine is a perfect example. It's very technical in terms of the chemistry, but then it's very artistic in terms of like the blending and what you finally put together to offer to people, or when to pick the grapes and how to blend and when you decide to make these moves. They're all about sensory evaluation. They have nothing to do with what the lab tells you. So I found a perfect calling for myself in the sense that I'm able to access both sides of my brain to do that. And it's funny, I'll wake up one day and one side of the brain is talking way louder than the other. And if the technical side of my brain is like going, I will just like do accounting that day. And if the other side of my brain is just going, it's a party in here, let's do something fun, that's when I work on marketing or blending or something that's more creative.
I like that. I can relate to that a lot. Do you remember what your Myers-Briggs score was?
Man, I'm going to have to, I just cleared out my office and I went through a bunch of paperwork and I didn't see it. Yeah, I forget what the scale is and all that. But I just remember my coach coming back and saying, wow, you are like equal on both sides, or, all four sides or whatever. I guess there's an extrovert and introvert side, obviously wildly extrovert. But then when it came down to, things like analytical versus creative, those balanced out.
I love that. I love that you kind of like you're saying about being left brain and right brain, that you use the Myers-Briggs tool and that you were also on a sailboat and on a motorcycle writing poetry, doing everything that really fits your personality to problem solve. And if more people did that, I think they'd, not limit themselves to just one side. They'd have a different experience. A few minutes ago you were talking about you can't get everything done at the bottom of a bottle. May I ask you, do you have any daily practice that you subscribe to?
I do work out every day. I have an elliptical machine in my bedroom, and I do get on that for 20 to 30 minutes a day. I kind of feel like if I at least do that, no matter how the day goes, the rest of the day, because you can have good days and bad, I can say, at least I did that. At least I worked out and I feel better for doing that. And I've got some, dumbbells and a push-up bar. And so I just have my little routine that I do in the morning. And if I do that, that gets me started with like a positive springboard for the day. It's like, you know what? You've already accomplished something. Now, the whole day can go completely south on you, but at least you did that.
How often do you have a day, Todd, that goes completely south?
Yeah, we all have our definitions of what that is. Not many, I got to say. A day going south is a bunch of little details going wrong in my business. And the fortunate thing about my business, and I always tell my staff this, is we are not doing organ transplants here. This is not a life and death business. Wine is a, luxury, fun product. And, the worst thing we can do is maybe mess up a credit card charge or something, get a decimal in the wrong place, and then somebody calls us up and go, whoa, hey, now, and like, oh, hey, we're really sorry, and we're going to send you out an extra bottle of wine. The worst thing that can happen is something that we can overcorrect, build loyalty by, over-delivering on the recovery of fixing a problem. But we're not going to kill anybody with what it is we do. And so with that, I always have that in the back of my mind. I'm very fortunate that I've been able to create a business for myself that fits my personality, that can work out in a way that we can always make things right. And when I wake up, either left brain or right brain, I have the flexibility to tackle that. Whereas if I'm working in a cubicle processing applications for an insurance company, that's my job. I don't care if I'm left brain or right brain that day. You have to do this. And for me in the past, that would have been death. So I finally got myself to a point where I've given myself some flexibility and maximize on how I'm feeling that day.
So let me make sure I've got this straight. So you do what you love. You live in one of the most beautiful towns in California. You're crazy in love with your wife. You spend a lot of time with dogs. You're doing podcasting. Is there anything that we're missing here? It sounds like a pretty happy life to me.
I am having a blast. I mean, we all have good days and bad days, but for the most part, most days are good. We all have our fun hobbies and stuff, and I've got a few, and, I try to maximize those, and, I still have a sailboat, and the winery's gone well, so a hobby of mine now is investing. And so whenever I take on a challenge, like, okay, what's a bigger challenge than the stock market, right? Because that thing is an unwieldy, horrible beast. So what do I do? Is like, I'm going to figure this out. And not only do I say, I'm going to try to figure this out, but I'm also like the organizer or host for an investment club that we have. So for me, it's not enough just to say, I'm going to figure this out, but to help me figure it out, I also want to teach it. Mm-hmm. Again, coming back to the whole teacher reference of what I think my life purpose is, that routine just keeps coming up over and over again. So I take on a new hobby and I delve into it, and it's like, I need to share this with people. There's got to be some other people who are really into this, and let's build on this together.
Very nice. How about money? Do you make more money, less money? Does it matter?
Make less money. I definitely make less money than I did when I worked at the big corporation, but it's so worth it. I get up out of bed, I work out, I'm like, okay, what do I feel like doing today? I mean, that was not an option with the big corporation. They told you what you were doing in no uncertain manner, and by when and how much, and they owned you. So it feels a little, well, we all know what pressure feels like of a demanding job. I don't have that. Now, the downside is you're your own worst boss. You will put a lot more, how should I say this, rules and constraints on yourself than any boss ever would. So you need to figure out how to manage that and how to balance that. And I got to say, you will drive yourself nuts trying to perfect your business. And I backed off of that. The first 3-4 years, never took a day off. And that will destroy a marriage, I will tell you. Fortunately, my wife was very understanding, and she was behind it. She wanted to see us succeed. But once I got to the point where I could see some light at the end of the tunnel, I'm like, you know what? Life is more important. And yes, we're going to take motorcycle rides. We're going to take off on our sailboat. We're going to take a month off, 6 weeks off, which we do now. That was unheard of in my previous life. Again, I do not make as much money as I did working for, a Fortune 500 company. But you know what? The riches are far greater now. To be able to take 6 weeks off and just go sailing. Are you kidding me? But, you have to manage that. You have to build an infrastructure to allow that to happen. And again, I tell my staff all the time, it's like, if they look at me and go, oh, it must be nice. I'm like, you guys are making more money than I am. And it's kind of how it should be.
What a guy. How about some lightning round short answer questions? Can I ask you those?
Let's go. Yes.
All right. I'm going to sneak one in here. Do you drink wine every day?
Yes.
Well, we got to go further on that. Do you drink more than one bottle of wine every day?
Ooh, not every day, but close.
What a life. Do you think that passion and purpose are the same thing?
No.
Do you think everyone has a life purpose?
Probably, but they don't always know it.
Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, how important is following your joy and igniting your life purpose?
11.
Great. Love it. Did you ever quit your job? We know the answer to this one, to follow your purpose. And do you think somebody needs to quit?
Of course. Yes. I know lots of people. I have customers every day who come up and say, oh my gosh, if I could only, and again, the teacher in me is like, well, what do you think your next step should be? How do you want to get to that? Oh, I'm kind of mired in those, these debts and that mortgage and those college bills. I'm like, figure it out. Otherwise, you're never going to be happy.
Right. I suspect when somebody walks into Moonstone Cellars, they get a lot more than they think they're getting. Just by meeting you and your team, it's a magical place. So more things happening about helping people find their purpose and rethink their lives than you ever intended.
It's fun. Wine makes friends.
Wine makes friends. What brings you great, great joy?
Again, seeing the spark go off in somebody's eyes when I'm able to share with them what it is that they really want to know, and I'm able to offer that to them.
And if you unexpectedly amassed a good-sized fortune, what would you do differently?
Almost nothing. I remember the other day, just for the fun of it, we bought a lottery ticket. I don't know, something funny happened that day, and someone said, you should buy a lottery ticket. I'm like, I'm going to do it. The checkout stand lady said, don't tell me you'd be one of those people, like, if you won the lottery, you wouldn't quit your job. And I said, I wouldn't, because I've already created what it is that I want to do. The only thing that I would do is make it better. I would have a bigger winery and a bigger vineyard and, something that was more fun for my customers. That would be awesome.
So just in closing, do you have any recommendations you want to make to our listeners for tools or experiences for personal growth or more mindful living?
I know it's trite to say follow your bliss, but it's what I keep doing. But it's more than that. You've got to have, kind of an engine in you or a motor running or a fire under you to like go for it and make it happen and trust in your instincts. And then find a great mentor. I've always done that. I always look around and say, okay, what is it that I want to do? And who are the smartest people in the game to help me do that? And create a symbiotic relationship with them to where it works for them. So my mentor in the wine business knew nothing about technology, and I was able to, light up their winery and, point of sale systems and, internet sales, and they taught me winemaking. And so with that, we both helped each other out, and I was able to grow to a new level. Just follow the passion, but create a plan for yourself and just go for it and trust yourself. Because if you lay on your deathbed and say, I wish I would have done it, in my mind, you haven't succeeded in life.
I agree. Very good advice. So let's just tell everyone listening what's the best way to connect with you another time. You can find Todd at moonstonecellars.com, and his wine-related phone number is
805-927-WINO.
You got to love that. We're wrapping up here, Todd. It's always so fun to speak with you, and I love your story, but I would love to talk you into giving our listeners an offer on some wine up there.
Absolutely. If you're listening to this and you're willing to take a chance on our booze, I'd say I'll give you a 10% off on any of our bottles until, I don't know, June. How about my birthday? June 3rd, 2015. There you go. I'll be 50 on that day. So let's call it, 10% off for Todd's 50th birthday.
So you heard it here, 50% off of all of Todd's. That's not what you said.
I'm turning 10 on June 3rd. Wait a minute.
So that's a very generous offer, and I hope anyone listening will take a chance, as Todd mentioned, and try out his delicious wines. What's the best thing to drink up that way?
Oh, my gosh. Again, I make like 14 different wines. The whole idea, again, because I love people, I make something. If you walk into my winery, I guarantee you'll find something you like. I have, from dry whites to sweet whites to rosés to light reds to heavy reds. So, if you come in and you like wine, you're going to find something.
Yeah. So in the white family, what are you recommending these days?
Oh, my gosh. Well, we have a nice Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Viognier, Gewürztraminer, Riesling, and those aren't too sweet for those of you who go, ew. Yeah, I always tell people try it, and if you like it, great. If you don't, no problem. I understand. We all have our preferences.
Well, it seems like lots of people like your wine. With over 400 awards, Todd Clift has been my guest today, talking to us about the deeper side of his life, as well as his wine business. Todd, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having us.
My pleasure. If you're listening today and you like what you've heard, please subscribe to our podcast, the Life Purpose Advisor podcast on iTunes, and let us know what you think with a rating or a review. And we'll see you next time.